My name's Fiona Yardley, and I'm coming to you from Canterbury, Christchurch University in England. I'll explain in a minute why it's England and not the UK. At the OOFTAS symposium in August, I was really struck by Ming Ho's comment on the middle point on the slide here, that some subjects are more challenging to teach out of field because they require high specialism, because of their complexity and expertise. And he gave maths as an example. Now, this struck me because in England, maths is seen as easy to teach out of field because it's black and white, unlike other subjects like English or history, which are considered to be complex. And this really struck me, this difference, and I wanted to think about it. Just to explain why I'm saying England, in the United Kingdom, the 4 countries, the education systems are entirely separate. I'm working in England, and I can't speak about what happens in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland, except to say that they are very different. And in particular, the way in which subjects are conceptualised and out-of-field teaching is conceptualised is different. So I am talking about England here specifically. So anyway, yeah, I had this sort of being struck by Ming Ho's comments because where I come from, maths is seen as the easy, straightforward one to teach, and other subjects as more complex. So if you look at the first 4 quotes on the slide here, these are quotes from participants in my doctoral study. So if you look, for example, at what Zoe and Ben are saying, they actually are enjoying maths even more because of this perception that it's just about black and white, that it's just right or wrong. But then if we add the last 2 quotes from my participants, these go even further. So it's not just that maths is about getting a single correct solution, but there's also a single correct method or procedure for finding it. And I love the imagery that Nick says. It's like following the instructions for making a Lego model. So illustration added there for you. You basically are following the instructions step by step until you get the required outcome. So I hope you can see why this struck me as a contrast. In England, we think maths is easy to teach out of field. In China, or at least from Ming Ho's perspective, it's a complex task requiring expertise. And this got me thinking, why? And from my own research, I started thinking this must be to do with how maths and the learning of maths is conceptualized. And it led me to reflect on my own research findings through a different lens. And so I'm really happy to have the opportunity here to share those reflections with you. But first of all, therefore, I should give you the context of my study. So my research, the focus was how out-of-field teachers conceptualize the subject that they're teaching out of field. And I used a philosophical framework associated with the verbs knowing, learning, and doing. Now, note there is a verb missing there. I didn't consider teaching. There's a lot of existing research which considers conceptualizations of pedagogical content knowledge, and I wanted to supplement the pedagogical content knowledge literature with looking at the other knowledges that teachers bring with them. And this was important in my reflections contrasting between Chinese and English perceptions of the relative complexity of teaching maths out of field. So basically, I kind of took teaching to be the enactment of underlying conceptualizations. And so it's not that there is something which is just endemically easier or harder than teaching maths in China or England. There may be something different in the underlying conceptualizations of the subjects. So back to my study, I used two conceptual frameworks in my study to match the two focuses. And you can see the title of my study along the top of the slide there. So the two main foci were out-of-field teachers and mathematics. So to conceptualize, my conceptual framework for out-of-field teaching used Hobbs et al. 2020, defining and mapping out-of-field teaching in Victorian government schools, which is an excellent framework for understanding the complexities of teaching out of field. For a conceptual framework for maths, I created my own, and I used the philosophical dimensions on the slide. So knowing, learning and doing, which I will explain in a moment how I then sort of match them up to ontology, epistemology and axiology. And I use literature to build up how mathematics is conceptualized within the society, the cultural context in which my participants were teaching. And then I gathered data about how 10 out-of-field teachers of maths conceptualized maths. My methodology, I used semi-structured interviews, including a range of creative data elicitation tools. I worked with 10 out-of-field teachers from a very diverse range. So they had different experiences of maths, different experiences of teaching maths. I used the bricolage as my methodology. Bricolage, like out-of-field teachers, we are using the tools to hand. So whatever's there, that's what we are using to do our research, just like whatever an out-of-field teacher finds to hand, that's what they use to teach. And my analysis was a mix of inductive and deductive coding, which included, if I had a question come up, I'd email my 10 participants again and ask them the questions. So rather than looking at my entire study, as I say, I just want to focus on the findings which illuminate for me this contrast that I noted at the symposium between China and England. So this figure here, I've created it just for this presentation. And I just want to put out there that it is reductionist. It's an oversimplification, but I wanted to try and put a lot of information into 20 minutes and create a succinct summary. Obviously, not everyone in England conceptualizes maths this way, but hopefully it gives an idea of the broad underlying assumptions of maths in England. And I should add here that I found out-of-field teachers' conceptualizations of maths were not very different to those portrayed in the not out-of-field literature. So, yeah, what have I got in terms of how maths is conceptualized? So in terms of ontology, I used ideas of absolutism and fallibilism, i.e., is maths discovered or is it created? So if it's absolutist, maths is totally independent of human beings, it's almost God-given, it's fixed, it's universal, it's indisputable. Whereas a fallibilist ontology suggests that maths is a human construct, societies create maths in response to our physical world. Now, one of the biggest thinkers in the philosophy of maths education, Paul Ernest, sets this up as a binary. You're either an absolutist or you're a fallibilist, and puts absolutism as the most prevalent position. But in my search of the literature, I think there's a lot of fallibilism, sort of little bits of fallibilism creeping in. For example, people want to situate maths in real world contexts when they're teaching or learning it. So it's seen as a product of a society, as well as part of a formal immutable system. As I say, out-of-field teachers demonstrated a similar ontology, or at least those in my study did, but these complexities were very evident. So, for example, there was a theology teacher, a religion teacher, teaching some maths. She repeatedly returned to the ontological roots of maths. I didn't ask her to, but she continually kept saying, but where does maths come from? Is it invented? Is it given by God? So real complexities from out-of-field teachers in their ontology. Moving on to epistemology. In the English culture, in terms of mathematics, there are ideas of fixed ability, that some people can do maths, others can't. Success in maths is measured in terms of how quickly you can do it and how accurately you can do it. Emotion is really interesting with respect to maths. People will tell you both that maths is completely value-free, neutral, devoid of human emotion, but they will also tell you about their emotional engagement with maths, usually negatively, usually about how much they dislike maths. Now, the out-of-field teachers participating in this study, they really emphasised the importance of human relationships in learning maths. And in particular, they talked about relationships with their students. So one example is a participant who was a music specialist who sought to help their learners and colleagues to feel the intrinsic beauty of maths through his teaching of it. And then finally, the axiology, how maths is valued. So maths is compulsory for all students or learners in England up to the age of 18. All students take GCSE at age 16, and they have to retake it until they pass or reach 18. So GCSE pass is a gateway qualification for many careers in England, including teaching. In fact, you could be a geography teacher without a GCSE in geography, but by law, you would have to have a GCSE in maths. There's a lot of political rhetoric about we learn maths because it's useful, because it has economic value, but also it's just easy to measure. Because of how it's conceptualized as being a subject which is about accuracy and speed. In out-of-field teachers, I also picked up an idea of personal fulfillment, that because maths is seen as a challenging subject, they felt pride that they could do maths or they could help others to do maths. So the out-of-field teachers' conceptualization of maths was not massively different to cultural norms, but they brought richness and complexity and sometimes surprising ideas about maths with them, some of which actually challenged our cultural norms. So where have my musings taken me? With respect to Mingho's comment in the summer about maths being a complex subject to teach out of field, totally the opposite to what we feel in England. Well, the first comment is, I felt envy. The suggestion that maths in China is conceptualized as more than a simple set of instructions that you either get right or wrong, that there is a more complex, there's a deeper understanding of maths. If that's true, wow, there's a lot here that would, I think, impact English children's experience of learning and using maths. So yes, I was jealous when I heard that maths is seen as a complex subject requiring expertise to teach out of field. My second conclusion was to be mindful that out of field teachers may be bringing different conceptualized subject with them. So it's important not to assume what they think the subject they are going to be teaching is. And therefore, any professional development for out of field teachers needs to facilitate self-reflection on how they conceptualize the subject. And it needs to go beyond they can do the subject. So it's not just testing them with the knowledge they'll be teaching. And it also needs to go beyond their knowledge of how to teach the subject, their pedagogical content knowledge. Instead, it needs to enable them to explore the boundaries between their own subject and the subject they're teaching out of field, and to explore boundaries within the subject that they're going to be teaching out of field, because they've got an existing relationship with that subject and they need an opportunity to connect their existing relationship with the subject to their new relationship with it as an out of field teacher. And then finally, I think it's really important to celebrate the different route that the out of field teacher has taken to come to teach this subject. So, for example, the music teacher who was using his subject to transform people emotionally, he does the same with maths. I had PE teachers whose careers had been made about making people feel good about their bodies, and they wanted people to feel good when doing maths. The RE teacher who approached her own subject with deep thought, she did the same with maths. I see these as wonderful opportunities. So professional development should not only facilitate reflection on your conceptualization of your own subject, but it should guide and encourage out-of-field teachers to celebrate the differences that they are bringing with them when they are teaching out of field.